On this edition for Saturday, August 7th, COVID infections in the U.S. hit a bleak milestone while debate over mask and vaccine mandates continues.
We thought things would get better, but nothing is getting better. That's why we were protesting.
And in our signature segment, a look at Sudan, where 2 years after a popular uprising, progress for reform has been slow. Next on PBS NewsHour Weekend.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, the Anderson Family Fund, the estate of Worthington Mayo Smith, the Leonard and Norma Clorfine Foundation, the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, Koo and Patricia Ewan, committed to bridging cultural differences in our communities, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg. We try to live in the moment, to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments.
For 25 years, Consumer Cellular's goal has been to provide wireless service that helps people communicate and connect. We offer a variety of no-contract plans, and our U.S.-based customer service team can help find one that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.
Additional support has been provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The United States is now averaging 100,000 new confirmed COVID-19 infections each day, a level not seen since February. Despite about half the U.S. population being fully vaccinated, the highly transmissible Delta variant is driving a rapid increase in cases over the last several weeks. The daily average is up more than 700% compared to a month ago, according to data compiled by the New York Times. Daily case numbers still remain below peaks seen in early January, but some states are experiencing record surges. In Florida, daily cases and hospitalizations are at record highs. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, said the state is now the current epicenter in the U.S.
To see the people of Florida suffering so terribly. I mean, this is an extraordinary virus that is a very formidable enemy, and we need to do everything we can to counter that. The best way to do that, obviously, is to get as many people vaccinated as you possibly can, as quickly as you possibly can.
Vaccination rates have started to tick up after dropping last month, but for some of those healthcare workers on the front lines, ongoing vaccine hesitancy is frustrating. Nicole Atherton is a critical care nurse in Mississippi.
I don't understand as an adult, as a parent, why people won't get vaccinated to protect their children, because it's impacting them now. There are children hospitalized with this now, and I can't do that. I can't take care of kids. That's too much.
While new COVID cases surge, differing opinions over lockdowns, masks, and vaccine mandates prevail. Yesterday, United Airlines announced that it will require all of its U.S. employees to be vaccinated as a condition of employment. I spoke with Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security and professor at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, who says that similar vaccine requirements should apply to airline passengers as well.
I think what you've seen in the last 2 weeks in the United States is we're done waiting, and that we have to move from the carrots of luring people, talking to them about the science, giving them extra pay, lottery systems, to a system of sticks where there will be burdens, privileges will be denied.
What do you think would happen if the sticks were used? I mean, is that enough to move enough people kind of in that wait and see category?
The most recent polling from the Kaiser Family Fund shows that about 41% of the unvaccinated would actually move to get vaccinated if something like airline travel was deprived because they want to go see their family members. I think the vaccinated, who are the majority in this country, are saying, you can choose to be unvaccinated, but I'm done carrying the universal burden.
Why is flying the place to start?
Part of it is, what can the federal government do? And they can do this. People often ask the Biden White House, will you have a federal mandate? That would be almost impossible to do. But here is a pool of people who are flying in a highly regulated industry that is regulated by the federal government. This is something that we're used to. The second is, and I think it's worth saying, is federal governments set floors for appropriate conduct. By raising the floor and simply saying, look, a major thing will be deprived or will be denied you unless you stop waiting, unless you move forward. And this is something that we now know, given this diverse group of the unvaccinated, about 41% of them would be moved to get a vaccination. And time is the one thing we really don't have much more of.
Now, you've gotten pushback for this idea of making, creating any sorts of restrictions to flying, saying, well, look, if you create no-fly lists, what are you doing? Are you calling unvaccinated people terrorists? So why is that not an appropriate critique?
So a no-fly list is just a term used to say what pool of people can or cannot go on a plane. So you can't go abroad without a passport. That in some ways is a no-fly list. So part of what I want, the message I wanted to say is this is a rule that can be enforced, because we are always determining who can and cannot get on air travel. But it's no different than what you're seeing in the private sector right now. The NFL says to its teams, look, you can do whatever you want, but if you can't show up to a game because your team members are sick, you have to forfeit that game. We've seen a lot more on that stick sign. And this would be another one to begin to drive those numbers again before we get a new variant that the vaccine can address.
Do you think that the Biden administration's decision to make foreign travelers who are coming into the U.S. be vaccinated, except for a few circumstances, will that have an impact?
What the Biden administration is proposing, or at least putting out there, is similar to what you're seeing in the private sector, which is we're going to raise the safety floor. We are going to make a statement that we want people to get vaccinated. And it's also very business friendly. We need to get people back onto airplanes. The airline industry is still struggling. Business travel, personal travel is still down. We need to get people moving again. And one way to get them moving and to get foreign travelers back in, because we do have a ban on a lot of countries, is to say, okay, we're going to start to open up, but part of that is going to include a vaccination mandate. So this will help the economy rather than hurt it.
All right, Juliette Kayyem from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The United States Senate voted to move forward toward a final vote on a bipartisan-backed infrastructure bill today.
The motion is agreed to.
The vote was 67-27 to approve the procedural vote ending debate on a substitute bill. As of this afternoon, consideration of amendments was underway. The Senate is meeting for a second weekend in an attempt to pass the $1.2 trillion legislation that funds roads, bridges, broadband internet, and other so-called traditional infrastructure. Majority Leader Senator Chuck Schumer says he will keep the Senate in session until this bill and a second one are approved. The second would authorize more than $3.5 trillion in spending on what the Biden administration calls human infrastructure, including child care, home health care, and education. The Senate was scheduled to begin a summer recess on Monday, but debate is expected to continue at least into next week. In Afghanistan, the Taliban said its fighters entered a second provincial capital city today, one day after the group claimed responsibility for assassinating a government official on the streets of Kabul. At the funeral for the government's media director today, President Ashraf Ghani vowed to find and punish the killers. The government did not deny that Taliban insurgents were inside the capital of the northern province of Jowzjan, but said the city had not fallen. Yesterday, the Taliban captured the capital of the southwestern province of Nimroz. Civilian casualties are increasing as U.S. and NATO forces withdraw from Afghanistan. Today, the U.S. and British embassies warned their citizens to leave Afghanistan immediately. Wildfires are destroying homes and forcing evacuations from California to southern Europe today. In Greece, flames raced through an area north of Athens overnight. Residents and their animals fled as flames raced down a mountainside. More than 100 fires began this week in Greece during one of the worst heat waves in decades. In Northern California, the Dixie Fire is now just over 20% contained as of this morning, and weather conditions are improving slightly this weekend. Scientists say warmer and drier conditions due to climate change over the past 30 years are contributing to the wildfires in the western United States. Team USA raked in more Olympic medals today at the Tokyo Games. The U.S. men's basketball team won their 4th consecutive gold medal in their win over France. In water polo, the U.S. women brought in their 3rd straight gold medal with a win over Spain. And both the women and men's track and field team won the 4x400-meter relay. The win gave Allison Felix her 11th Olympic medal, making her the most decorated U.S. track and field athlete in Olympic history, surpassing Carl Lewis. For more of today's stories and the latest national and international news, visit pbs.org/newshour. While the U.S. continues to tackle the surge of new COVID-19 cases from the Delta variant, a growing body of research is showing that there is another coronavirus crisis on the horizon: the health care and treatment for COVID long haulers whose symptoms can last for months. In an article for the New Republic, freelance reporter Karina Pizer found that with a medical system slow to recognize long COVID symptoms, the impact is already starting to emerge, particularly in underserved communities.
So I think that in general, the US was slow to reckon with the scope of long COVID and the reality of it as a condition, which, isn't completely surprising given that as the disease itself continues to develop, we keep finding ourselves, forced to play catch up with variants, with, changing symptoms, et cetera. So in general, what's kind of come together is a system, an infrastructure that is a bit behind, and that, like you say, is currently unable to absorb the scope of the long COVID crisis.
Well, what you also point out is that the people who are likely to suffer the worst brunt of long COVID and the lack of an infrastructure to be able to deal with it are already the poorer and more marginalized communities that were hardest hit by the virus.
Right. So, we have seen the way that the disease itself of COVID has played out. It has affected the low-income communities of color more than any others. And we also know what the state of healthcare looks like in this country. And the pandemic brought a lot of that to light. Safety net hospitals were ill-equipped to deal with the influx of patients early in the pandemic, and they do not necessarily have the means to create these long COVID clinics. Similarly, in rural communities, the number of hospitals in rural America have decreased dramatically over the past decade. Same with community health centers that are kind of, often the first recourse for low-income communities. That has all really been depleted. And so the communities that were hit the hardest by the pandemic are not only going to have the most difficulty accessing care, going to these major medical centers where these long COVID clinics are emerging that are often in major cities where people in rural communities, they might not even know they exist, but also it's difficult to get there. If you don't have transportation, it's difficult to miss work. There are so many reasons why people are being excluded from the treatment that is available.
Besides the health factors here, what are the money implications and ramifications of a large population of people suffering basically long-term disability? I mean, how do we determine whether or not they should qualify for disability payments, and what is the beginning and end of long COVID?
Right. So, that's a question that there is no answer to. And because there's no answer to it yet, that's creating a lot of problems for people in the thick of it. I spoke to one woman who had qualified for disability initially due to her long COVID symptoms. She was a nurse leader at a hospital in the Atlanta area. And when she put in a request to have her disability renewed, her employer's third-party affiliate denied that request, attributing her symptoms to behavioral health issues. And they cited notably anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. Whether or not she is experiencing anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder are kind of besides the point, because she tells me that she is walking using a walker. She's someone who used to be very physically active. She's using a walker to take a walk in the afternoon. And during our phone conversation, she was pausing regularly to catch her breath. And that kind of chalking these symptoms up to behavioral health issues, saying, no, it's just anxiety, you should seek psychiatric treatment, is not only something that women and people of color, I think, hear often in medical contexts, but especially in the context of long COVID.
All right, freelance journalist Karina Pizer joining us from Brooklyn. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
In 2019, a popular uprising in Sudan brought down longtime leader Omar al-Bashir, who the government promised to send to the International Criminal Court, where he's wanted for war crimes, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. Since then, a transitional government has led the country, establishing a timetable for democratic elections and economic reforms. But progress has been slow, and impatience is growing. NewsHour Weekend special correspondent Benedict Moran and video journalist Jorgen Samso filed a reporter's notebook from Sudan's capital, Khartoum. A warning, some images in this story are disturbing.
On the streets of Khartoum, it's a game of cat and mouse. Sudanese police launch tear gas at angry protesters, and protesters throw the tear gas right back at police. These youth are barricading roads and burning tires to express their frustration at the slow pace of Sudan's democratic transition.
We thought things would get better, but nothing is getting better. That's why we were protesting.
In 2019, activists like these brought down the country's longtime military leader Omar al-Bashir, ending 30 years of authoritarian Islamist rule. Peace, liberty, and justice was the slogan of the revolution then. It remains the slogan today.
Protests brought the former government down, and these protests are about keeping that revolution alive. Sudan is at a turning point, and the very soul and identity of the country is at stake.
2 years later, the anger and impatience on the streets is palpable.
We have people they're killed, and now there is no any justice in Sudan.
The revolution was supposed to realize peace, liberty, and justice, but it wasn't realized. So we are prepared to do another revolution to ensure peace, liberty, and justice.
To many Sudanese, the former president may be out, but his brutal military is not. Sudan is now led by a fragile alliance. On the one side are the civilian activists who led the revolution. On the other are the former security forces that were part of the Ancien Regime. Together, they are reforming the economy, planning democratic elections, and ensuring justice for past crimes. But the government includes those who are implicated in past crimes, presenting a difficult conflict of interest. At the height of street protests in 2019, Sudanese security forces opened fire on a Khartoum sit-in, killing more than 100 people. There has been no investigation into their deaths. Today, their faces are memorialized on the streets of Khartoum. On the 3rd of every month, friends and supporters gather in this square to sing revolutionary songs, read the Quran, and remember those who died in Sudan's struggle for democracy. 25-year-old Abdul Salam Kisha was killed that day in 2019. Amna Buhari is Kisha's mother.
I want justice for all the martyrs, not only for my son, but for all the people who were killed in the December Revolution, before the June 3rd massacre and after.
Activists believe many of the bodies of the June 3rd massacre ended up in the back of this hospital. During a recent blackout, a foul stench alerted the neighborhood to this container. The refrigerated morgue's power had been cut, and inside were dozens of rotting bodies. Decomposition was advanced. When the bodies of the alleged victims were sorted for DNA testing, body parts fell off with their clothes.
If we take outside, they smile, gonna be a lot of.
Activists like Mohammed Hijazi Osman stand watch here around the clock. He is afraid the government could hide the bodies, evidence that could be used to put the killers behind bars.
We are here because we have a debt to our brothers and to the people who are inside, to find out what happened to them.
Painful economic reforms have also brought people out on the streets. In December of last year, the U.S. State Department removed Sudan from the list of state sponsors of terrorism after the country agreed to provide compensation to victims of past attacks and normalize relations with Israel. But the move has been no panacea. Under the former government, the country accrued massive debt. To qualify for debt relief, the Sudanese pound was recently deregulated, and subsidies for food and fuel were canceled. Inflation is now nearing 400%, wiping out people's savings and making life expensive for many ordinary Sudanese. Haja Halouf sells spices at a Khartoum market.
I can't even describe how expensive life is. People don't come to the market as often as before, and they can't afford to buy anything. Sometimes I come to the market with this, and I return home without selling anything because people cannot afford it.
There's widespread shortages of things like bread and other crucial imports. The price of fuel has skyrocketed. 65-year-old Abu Bakr al-Sheikh is waiting in line for fuel.
Before, I could have filled up the tank 2 times with the same amount of money. Now, it's less than 1 gallon of fuel. I'm so angry and so nervous. It never happened before. Even when the British colonists left Sudan, it wasn't as bad as it is now. Unless you are a thief, you can't afford life in Sudan.
Sudan is now selling off some of the country's 650 state-owned companies, 200 of which belong to the Sudanese military, and trying to lure foreign investors to spur economic growth and create jobs. Crucial steps to keep the revolution moving forward. Jonas Horner is an analyst with the International Crisis Group.
There is a risk of backsliding. The economy represents the #1 risk to the transition. It is really the job of the civilian side of this transition to illustrate to Sudanese, to ordinary Sudanese who are struggling under these economic pressures, that they can do the job of responding to what Sudanese are most concerned about on a day-to-day basis. Without doing that, Sudanese may begin to withdraw, and have already begun to withdraw their support for the transition.
Horner says Washington is taking an increasing interest in the success of Sudan's transition.
Currently, Sudan has increasing geopolitical relevance. It is situated in a very tough neighborhood. If successful, Sudan's transition potentially offers a genuinely inspiring example of a move from a true entrenched autocracy to a democracy and greater plurality. And that certainly reflects values that will resonate with those in the U.S. and Washington, D.C. and hopefully beyond.
Back at the market, 50-year-old Al-Hadi Habib Allah says his prices for fruits and vegetables have doubled over the past 10 days. Life is worse than under the former ruler, Bashir, he says, but he has hope for the future.
This is part of the process. It's the labor of hard work, and we need to suffer before we have a new transition and a new reality in Sudan. This is an experience Sudan must go through to have a better future.
This is PBS NewsHour Weekend, Saturday.
Finally tonight, in Germany, one family farm turns a cornfield into a giant maze every year, always with a different theme. And this Olympic year, the design is making intrepid adventurers walk in circles to find a way out.
It's built to be a puzzle on the ground and a work of art from the air. So the Olympic rings make a perfect cornfield maze.
Over the last years, we have made all sorts of themes. This year, we decided on something for the Olympics, as the Olympics are happening in Tokyo, and so we said we would bring the Olympics to Bavaria.
The Meyer family begins mowing their maze when the corn is about knee-high. Then they wait and watch until it's close to as high as an elephant's eye, making it tall enough to hide in.
I think that for the kids it's great, as they can't see each other anymore and have to be careful that they find the way out. So it's really fun and it's good.
This year, the maze also contains some new challenges.
In the maze, there are games to play. Symbols have been hidden, and there are quiz questions, all to do with the subject of the Olympics. So you can make stops at various stations and find out more about it and learn something.
But learning aside, the gold medal in this event, if there was one, would clearly go to all who find the escape route.
I think it's pretty cool, as the questions are really interesting and also topical, as they have to do with current Olympic Games themes. We didn't manage everything, but quite a bit, and in the end, we were quite happy that we found the way out, as it was getting a bit long in there. But it was super.
The corn will grow until the maize closes in October. When it's over, the family's cows are the winners. They get to eat the harvested corn.
That's all for this edition of PBS NewsHour Weekend. For the latest news updates, visit pbs.org/newshour. I'm Hari Srinivasan. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and have a good night.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, the Anderson Family Fund, the estate of Worthington Mayo Smith, the Leonard and Norma Clorfine Foundation, the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, Koo and Patricia Ewan, committed to bridging cultural differences in our communities, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg. We try to live in the moment, to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments. Additional support has been provided by Consumer Cellular and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.